Dr. Rowe here, and in this live, I am going to talk about rules. Rules. Now, I'm smiling, but actually, it's not such a smiley subject, mainly because I have concerns that I want to express. If you're watching this right now and you feel the last 12 months with lockdown, government restrictions on what we can and can't do, are we allowed out? Are we allowed to go and eat and visit people, etc.? These are all the things that are happening at the moment as a result of the situation with COVID and the uncertainty around it. And the point I want to make here is that over this last year, we've seen increases in mental health, emotional instability, increases in self-harming, particularly in teenagers, couples getting into distress, relationships starting to break up, etc. And I don't want to go into that right now, but what I do want to say is that I believe a lot of this is linked to the fact that unconsciously there are mental shackles being wrapped around us to make people feel as though they don't have control. And what lack of control tends to lead to is an increased heightened stress and a feeling of confusion, and almost like people wanting to break out and take back control. So on that subject, I want to talk to this briefly. I just want to give you some things to consider. See if I can find it here. Yes, here we go. Okay, so it should have come onto the screen in front of us, or in front of you. So the first thing is to be aware of that when someone is putting rules upon you, it is human nature. We have 6 basic human needs, every one of us. One of those needs is a need for security. Absolutely. I want to feel a sense of security. I want to feel in control. And we can do that by controlling our world, by making decisions about how we show up, what rules we operate our lives by. And if we feel that we're in control of those rules, to some extent, we feel like we've got a sense of freedom. And that's the dilemma, or the double bind as it's called in human psychology, which is on one side, I want to be in control, but if I'm in too control, I don't have a sense of freedom. So the other side to control is the sense to have freedom. So if you have absolutely no rules, then you've got complete freedom, and that's one area of life where some people are really high in their variety they seek, whereas others say, no, I want to control everything. And then they get to a point where they're sort of bored of being in control, or they feel like they need to break out. And then they'll go and seek adventure and seek freedom. I don't know if this is making sense, but it's an interesting part of human psychology that I've worked with for many years with people. And often when I'm talking to somebody that feels very stressed in the way they're describing their world to me, I'll immediately start to formulate a picture of the model of their world. And in neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, it's referred to as, get an understanding of the person's model of the world, or your own model of the world. Well, right now, the model of the world for everybody has been knocked around and reshaped, etc., and turned upside down in many cases. So these rules, these restrictions, however you want to phrase them, that have been put upon people, here's what I believe is happening. There is now a heightened sense of stress in households. Stress because of the uncertainty that people have around their financial future. Also, stress around the fact that they want to make plans for the future, but they can't specifically go and make those plans because all of a sudden you're not allowed to go travel, or if you do, you have to have a vaccination passport. What if you don't want to have a vaccination because of your principles, or for other reasons you can't have a vaccination? Then does that mean I can't travel? And then what if they introduce that into cafes and all these things, and people are starting to get confused and upset and stressed about that. So this sense of heightened stress comes in when we feel like we're lacking control. So the challenge with that is people then start to introduce, on a personal level, more rules into their own world. So they start to put more protection around things like, my kids, do I take my kids out? I mean, the people that have had newborn children in the last 6, 12, 18 months are maybe asking the question, should I take my child out? And so in some cases, people haven't been taking their kids out. They haven't been giving them exposure to the outside world. And what my experience is, and I've seen this, and I might do a podcast on this over the coming weeks, is that when children don't get that social interactivity, I mean literally exposure to other kids and other families, then they become more withdrawn. They don't socially interact so well with other kids. When they do get brought out, they even get emotional, or they burst into tears or whatever, and then they can't handle that. And even with my own kids, I noticed that at an early age, if there was a period where they hadn't been out for maybe even 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then they went out, it was a bit of a surprise. So that's what's been happening, is some parents have been like, no, we can't let our kids out, can't do anything. And then there's others people I know that have gone, actually, you know what, we're going to get out, we're going to go out walking, we're going to experience, going to take them on a drive, get them used to going in a car and traveling to somewhere, and then whether it's going for a walk in an open space or whatever you're allowed to do, quote unquote, I have to say that in this video, don't I? That's giving people that chance of more freedom. But even on a macroscopic level, it's like, how are we managing our interaction with our family? Are we meeting up? Are we still going out but staying socially distanced? No, let's not do that. Let's just stay in. So people may be creating rules that are holding them in a space now. That lack of uncertainty means at least I can create some macro rules in my life, inside my house, in my world, that make me feel in some level of control. But even within that can create stress. I don't know if this is making any sense at all. So again, I'm just making you aware of it from all the work. I have a suspicion that over the next couple of years, in the personal development world that I operate, we're going to see a lot of results, a lot of issues, a lot of emotional elements bubble up in people as a result of COVID. I think we're going to have to deal with that from a personal development interventional perspective. It's already happening. I mean, coaches are already having to deal with this on an ongoing basis. Anxiety, of course, then kicks in. Anxiety used to be maybe linked to one or two things, but now people are feeling anxious about so much more because of the information that's being bombarded at them. It's not like you open up the news and it's already positive and saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. A lot of it is like, you will have to do this, you will have to do that, you have to do that. And of course, people hear this information and then suddenly feel, oh, shit, I don't know what's the right thing to do. And that's where the anxiety comes in. And they hear conflicts, the polarity that exists in the media about those that want to be vaccinated versus those that don't, those that believe in the extent of COVID and should lockdown have happened versus has it made any difference at all. And these conversations create this confusion and that leads to anxiety. So people, again, wanted to try and get control of their lives, start to wrap themselves in a set of rules that, unfortunately, if you have rules on a national level and then you create so many rules on a personal level, it's like binding and binding and binding, and then, I can't escape. So that comes to my last point, was what if you relax the rules a little bit? And when I'm working with somebody on stage, some of you might have seen this, it's quite interesting to see somebody that, like, they have a value. For example, I value health, I value relationship, I value integrity, I value love and connection, I value time with my partner, I value integrity or whatever that value is. And then I ask them, and they say, I don't feel a great sense of connection with my partner. Why is that? Oh, because the only way I really feel connection is when they call me, text me, tell me they love me, call me every hour, message me when they get back from work, fully understand everything that I'm thinking. And of course, that becomes a set of rules. Now, I'm going to go into detail on this right now, but essentially, the more rules you wrap around something you want to experience, the harder it becomes to experience that thing. Because only if all those things are, in other words, it's like a computer program that says, if this is met and this is met and this is met and this is met, then you can do this. It's like taking a driving test. Only if this, and this happens, you pass the test. Or we create rules around how we want to experience the world. I don't know if this is making any sense to you, but if it is even remotely making sense, ask yourself a simple question. What have you been feeling frustrated about in your life that you've wanted to experience, but you've not been able to experience it? And then ask yourself the question, why haven't you been able to experience it? And the answer then comes because ... And whatever comes next are basically the rules that you've created in your mind for why you have to have this happen in order to experience that. Well, what if you removed some of those rules or relaxed them in such a way that it becomes easier to experience that? Okay, that's a whole different game altogether. If I did that, that could be a game changer. Maybe I'd feel more relaxed. Maybe I would feel like I'd experience more of this and that and this. Now, I'm not going to go into detail because it warrants more time. And in fact, if you go to the Seekardo podcast, look out for this. I actually have said to Harminder, I want to do specifically a podcast on this subject, because I think right now people are binding themselves in a lot of smaller rules that are tripping themselves up. And you may or may not agree with that, but that's what I'm observing. So hopefully this makes some sense. It's not really meant to give you answers necessarily, but maybe give you some things to consider. And look out for our podcast on this on the seekardo.com/podcast website. Dr. Roach signing out.